Welcome and good evening, and thank you for joining us. What a beautiful way to welcome in the spring. It's the vernal equinox reading for the Tarot Poet Heart Compass. And the name of the book is Heart's Compass Tarot, Discover Tarot Journaling and Create Your Own Cards. That was published this February by Two Fine Prose Books. I'm Tania Pryputniewicz. I'm the author of the book I just described that you're seeing on the slide, as well as your host for tonight. Along with Anna, we'll be moderating together. So, as I said, tonight's vernal equinox reading brings together all the poets in the tarot poetry chapter in the workbook. And you'll see a image on the screen of the inspiring tarot card or cards that may have gone into the energy of the poem while they read, as well as I've put up there a book of theirs that we chose. And if you enjoy their work, we're inviting you to support their work by checking out their other books. We're delighted tonight to start off our tarot poetry journey with the Fool card, which is an auspicious way to begin at the very beginning of the arcana, the major arcana soul arc, the zero, the beginning. So the late Ruth Weiss was born in 1928 in Berlin. Ruth and her family fled the rise of Nazism to Vienna in 1933, and then narrowly escaped to Amsterdam before coming to America in 1939. Ruth performed her jazz poetry in New Orleans, New York City, Chicago, San Francisco, and Vienna, Austria, and published 22 books of poetry, as well as dozens of broadsides. She was crowned the Beat Generation Goddess Ruth Weiss by Chronicle columnist Herb Caen, and she wrote her poetry for more than 70 years, still writing and reciting right up until she passed away last summer on July 31st, 2020. And those sources are from the Beat Museum and the Mendocino Beacon. Tonight we have a special recording reading Ruth's poem that appears in Heart's Compass as Robyn Beattie, abstract photographer and daughter of Paul Beattie, who was a Beat era abstract expressionist and creator of the film The Brink, which was written and directed by Ruth Weiss. And Robyn's reading of Ruth's poem is accompanied on keyboard by Sonoma County musician Stephen Pryputniewicz. So this is a sound file.
One foot off the cliff, the other on solid rock, her heart in her mouth. Night breaks into dawn. A fool sees stars in the day, red, twinkling in the sun. Ma Earth, stop quaking. The fools are encircling you, with love returning. Is this really dark? No moon and the Milky Way. In search for her word, she travels, book in hand. The pages are blank. The dance of the flame, the picture in the embers, tell all ever known. Down your beat, wild wind, rocking to your tune all night. Fool smiles into sleep. There the bridge is, every so often. Layer by layer, she peels the onion she is, and laughs with her tears.
Next up, we have Annie Finch reading The Priestess. Annie is out of the country, so this will also be a video presentation that Annie sent to us. Annie Finch's 7 books of poetry include Eve, Calendars, Among the Goddesses and Spells, New and Selected Poems, Wesleyan University Press. Annie's poetry has appeared in Poetry, Paris Review, New York Times, and the Penguin Book of 20th Century American Poetry. Her books about poetry include The Body of Poetry and a Poet's Craft, a comprehensive guide to making and sharing your poetry. Annie teaches poetry and magic in her free online women's community, Poetry Witch.
The Priestess. Heavy curtains close around my golden powers, but I wake in the dark noon and see shadows over the white embers. I touch the pages, cascade down, and the folds of my robes fall like water, floating candles. Even a book is simple in this folded world. I remember patterns opening into pillars. They are my own. What a quiet earth holds me. Earth's own daughter. I keep my wisdom. I carry my own crown.
Thank you. The rest of our presentations will be readers reading on our call with us. So thank you for observing those with us. It was wonderful to share them with you. So our next poet is Tanya Ko Hong, and she is a poet, translator, and cultural curator, championing bilingual poetry and poets. Internationally published, she is the author of 5 books, including The War Still Within, 2019. Her poetry appears in Rattle, Beloit Poetry Journal, Entropy, Cultural Weekly, and WSQ Women's Studies Quarterly, The Feminist Press, among others.
That is the Korean deck called Hwa-tu, and I'm gonna read the Korean deck, the Hwa-tu. Go stop. I was standing in a Korean market line. I saw the Hwa-tu deck next to the register. I felt like I saw the little devil, the symbol of a red. I hesitated to grab, but it had a crazy glue. I paid and hid it in my purse and looked around to make sure that no one saw. When I came home, I hid them behind my books like I have secrets. I forgot about it like bad memories. I had a dream about my aunt Como, who played those cards all the time. She snapped my hand. No playing that cards. They were taboo in our house. My dad lost so much money, lost our beautiful house under the mountain. I wanted to move there when I grew up. Just one night, Daddy played the Go Stop game and lost that house. That red deck is taboo to touch. It got fire on it. But I love to play Finding Fortune for that day. Like my aunt, who did this every morning like she was praying to God. Seriously, after she played, she told us, come home right after school. Today there will be a bad news. What will be? Do not talk with the strangers. She was the soothsayer. I played my fortune once in a while. When my aunt wasn't there, my heart pumped. There were several cards that I wanted to get. From B, visitor, can be a lover. Also letters, happy news. I want to have a good news. A love letter maybe. Cleaning my bookcase, the deck dropped on my foot. Magically, I sat down and played. I remembered all the rules to play. My fortune was bad news and good news, a drink and a visitor. So what to say? I have a visitor and I offer him a drink. He says, I have a good news and had a bad news. Which one do you want to hear? Now, I play this little red devil and make my own story.
Thank you so much, Tanya. Our next reader tonight is Marianela Medrano. And Marianela Medrano is a Dominican writer and psychotherapist who lectures across the country on issues of spirituality with emphasis on the divine feminine, cross-cultural psychology, healing, and writing. She has been a faculty mentor for the Institute of Transpersonal Psychology, now Sophia University in Palo Alto, California, and a visiting scholar at Goddard College in Vermont. She's currently president of the National Association for Poetry Therapy, NAPT. She is the author of 7 books of poetry and a children's story.
Thank you so much, Tanya, for this opportunity. And, you know, tarot and poetry are wings of one bird to me. So when you invited me to write this poem, it made so much sense. And particularly the one I chose. To me, working with the tarot is a way to seek guidance in moments of stuckness most of the time. So writing this poem was really freeing for me. So Kali, the Awakener. I was standing at the threshold of becoming. Your black breast poured a river of words to drown me in. You, fiercer one, ripped up every layer of myself until I was no more. We dreamed of the apocalypse before the birds of gods. Come, by all means, make me translucent. Turn me into a veil once more. Wear me, burn me. Let me be your tongue, your many arms, your 3 eyes. Let me be the sword in one hand. Let injustice be the severed head on the other. We must be the terror we want to fight. Your fury burst from Durga's forehead. Your body is the seed of our sisterhood. Dark and naked, it holds us together. Disheveled, our hair is every avenue to freedom. We are the eternal incarnation of fire, soul, and justice. Let's catch demons with our tongues, swallow them, kill the others with a shriek. I see you there knotting the necklace of skulls, embroidering demon arms on our skirts. Let's dance together to protect our children. We are the battlefield and the victory at once. Thank you.
Thank you, Marianela. Our next reader is Carrie Nassif. Carrie Nassif is a queer poet, photographer, parent, and psychologist. She lives in the rural Midwest with her spouse, their teen, a 65-pound lapdog, an old orange kitty, and a bearded dragon. Her work can be found in The Gravity of the Thing, Pomona Valley Review, Tupelo Quarterly, and various anthologies.
Thank you, Tanya. Sorry, my throat is waking up. I wrote this as a response to the exercises that you had done in your classes that were also in the book. And in all of those roles that you mentioned, I feel like emotional depths is a place where you live a lot if you're a therapist, if you're a parent, those sorts of things. And so I kind of feel like I live in the depths, and this was kind of meant to be emotional depths. And sometimes I get kind of peopled out, and I need to be able to replenish myself and kind of balance things out with like a spring equinox, trying to kind of find that center again. And this was what was on my mind when I drew this card and when I wrote this poem, which is an interpretation to this card. So, as I seek my inner core, I begin to feed my own source. I become connection itself, a resonating wave upon wave upon wave, a constant, a beating heart like a nurturing womb within. I discover the emotional strength to climb upward, a reflective thing, a reflexive, recursive, spiraling path spreading ever outward. A resonating receptivity that can renew my sense of self. I grow more able to relate to others from this fulfilled state and more able to help them see the source within them. This is the wisdom of heart's healing.
Thank you so much, Carrie. Our next reader is Lisa Rizzo. Lisa Rizzo is the author of Always a Blue House, Saddle Road Press, 2016, a finalist in the 2016 National Federation of Presswomen Awards, and in the poem An Ocean, Big Table Publishing, 2011. Her poetry and nonfiction have also appeared in various journals and anthologies.
Well, thank you, Tanya. I think this is a wonderful opportunity. I loved what Marianela said, that tarot and poetry are the wings of one bird. I wrote it down. I'm going to steal that. This, being part of the project that I worked with you, drawing, I look at my drawing compared to Carrie's, and it was definitely stretching myself to be part of that. But I loved the fact that it made me think of my own imagery and think about what is important to me. And that's why I chose the Ace of Wands to read, because it's talking about words, about creativity, about sparking new imagery. And I think that's what tarot does for me. I often pull cards just before I'm ready to write something new, because it just seems the cards open up avenues that I wouldn't have normally gone to. And so that's why, why it's important to me. So this poem, Ace of Wands. Burning bright, being lit by creativity, light and words flowing on the page, source of fire, the need to create, to express deepest thoughts comes bubbling up, a warmth spreading from the center. Light the candle, rise in the dark, close to the heart. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. Our next reader is Christine Stewart-Nuñez, South Dakota's poet laureate, who is the author of several books of poetry, including Untrust, University of New Mexico Press, 2016, and Blue Words Greening, Terrapin Books, 2016, winner of the 2018 Whirling Prize. This professor of English at South Dakota State University released the poetry anthology, South Dakota in Poems, last October, and looks forward to The Poet and the Architect, her book forthcoming from Terrapin Books in 2021.
Thank you for having me, and hello to everyone. I bring greetings from South Dakota, the ancestral lands of the Ochete-Sakowin, otherwise known as the Dakota or Sioux, where I am a perpetual visitor. And so I have studied poetry and tarot separately often, but they overlap as well for the past 20 years. And I was gifted a deck when I was in my 20s, and I created this book of reading different books about tarot, and then I use it and for years, and I annotate it for interpretation because I like to use it as reflection, as a way to introspect on myself and find new ways of thinking about the challenges that I face. And I think poetry is the same way too. I usually use poetry to think through things, right, and create art from those thoughts. So my poem is, oh, I have to put on my readers because I have contact lenses in, and I have to have readers because that's where I am at in my life. Is the Queen of Swords. Between geyser steam and glacial ice, the newborn's cry and deceased's last breath. Between the ocean's moan and mountain's whistle, between moon rock and lava, between keening and calm, the wind blows. Apply will and wit. Perceive with sharp intellect the litter, dust, and dirt swirling. In the distance, wind turbines turn above fields. Observe and solve.
Thank you so much, Christine. I'm just going to share a haiku that I wrote. This is on the screen. You're seeing an image of artwork by Heather Watts. I had been writing with a group of writers, trying to write a haiku a day. And so it was a challenge to think about trying to do that with a tarot card, to compress all that dense imagery down into some haiku. So I kind of cheated and made linked haiku for the fortune. So I'll just read that. And also on the screen is some an artwork of mine that I think is the closest to what I would consider the Wheel of Fortune. I think as writers, that is our fortune and how we see. So here's the haiku linked. Fortune, are you rim, spokes, hub, bearing apples, infant, queen, spinning for the spin? Eyes iris, life spoked, heart print, or fingertips, soul's concentric home. My fortune, my eyes, how I see shapes my bounty, hazel, ups and downs. So we are so phenomenally blessed to have our next featured reader, Rachel Pollack. I can't thank her enough for the contributions she's brought to the tarot world. 78 Degrees of Wisdom was one of the first books that I encountered as a young tarot, someone interested in tarot. So without further ado, Rachel is the author of 45 books, including 2 award-winning novels, a collection of poetry, Fortune's Lover, and a series of books on tarot known around the world. Her first book, 78 Degrees of Wisdom, was published in 1980 and has been in print ever since, now in its 3rd edition. She has been translated into 15 languages and taught tarot in 10 countries, including Australia, New Zealand, and China. She lives in New York's Hudson Valley.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay, thank you. So I'm going to read the poem The High Priestess from my book Fortune's Lover. And then Tanya has very kindly invited me to read a couple other poems. And I want to say, first of all, what wonderful poetry we've been hearing. I feel honored to be in such wonderful company of terrific poets. So, High Priestess, of what? That's what she asked her mother when she got the job, with the pretty robe, the vermeil crown, the sharp moon tucked under her feet, and the neatly lettered scroll she could never seem to open. Of what? But her mother was one of the old ladies, and that's just the sort of thing they never answer. So now when they come, the men in the fur hats or the long black dresses with the high white collars, she can only stare and look impressive and hope they don't expect some blessing or curse or detailed instructions for making candles or killing goats. Sometimes she imagines she's somewhere else, on a camel, traveling by pricks of light, searching for a man whose name is laughter, waiting outside his mother's tent, or regurgitating webs from a swollen belly, or hanging from a hook on her sister's meat locker on the other side of 7 doors. But she knows, unless her mother of 1,000 names sends someone else, she will never leave this place. The black and white columns, the blue curtain, heavy with palms and pomegranates, hiding nothing but a placid pool of water. The tight scroll that tells her nothing, and in her heart and in her face, no thunder speak, no shining whisper, only silence. So the next poem is The Magician, and in the text is divided into two alternating sections, and so since you can't see the difference, and I'll just say, so one is the emerald tablet from ancient times from Hermes Trismegistus, and the other is the Homeric hymn to Hermes, which is a very different vision of Hermes as a kind of trickster child. That which is below is like that which is above, and that which is above is like that which is below to accomplish the miracle of one thing. I call my brother Hermes, my soul thief music man, my dress-up dancing man. The sun is its father, the moon is its mother. I whistle him to come to me, sliding up the evening, dripping honey lies and magic. The wind carried it in its belly, the earth received and nourished it. Hermes the con man, handing timeshares and cruises, guidebooks and theater passes, PowerPoints and promises to lackluster dead. Separate earth from fire, subtle from gross, gently with great prudence. Hermes, my razzle-dazzle mambo boy, my scoundrel snake-stick lover man, skin bags full of moly, stones and shiny feathers. This is the power of powers, for it overcomes all subtle things and penetrates all solid things. My scandal whisper gossip god, my story serpent mojo man. Thus the world is created, the little world according to the prototype, the great world. My brother, my Hermes. Finished and perfect is what I have said, the work of the sun. And finally, the Empress, which begins with a Talmudic tale, and then it gives the expansion of that story and its meaning to the card. Empress. 4 rabbis entered paradise: Ben Azai, Ben Zoma, Ben Abuya, and Rabbi Akiva. Ben Azai looked into the fire and died. Ben Zoma saw the waters above and the waters below, and only 3 fingers' breadth between them, and was lost to reason. Ben Abuya saw 2 thrones in heaven, not one, and became the enemy of his people. Only Rabbi Akiva entered and left in peace. Really, it's not very complicated. Not some mind twister like, I, the Lord your God, am a jealous God. Here, listen. If a bird's nest chance to be before you with fledglings or eggs, you shall set aside the mother so that you will enjoy length of days. And now here's another one. Honor your father and your mother so that you will enjoy length of days. So that's it. 2 places in the whole book, and each of them as simple really as eat your cereal. Except, here's what the later teachers say about that bird's nest. The bird is Binah, Sephirah number 3, like card 3, the Empress, on the tree of life, the great mother, like the Empress, the source. Out of the 3 come the 10,000 things. And the nest, not some bowl of twigs and bird spit, but paradise itself, Eden, home of 2 big trees and 4 rivers. How did something simple get so complicated? Why not leave it as, be nice to birds and have a good life? There was once a man named Elisha ben Abuya, an early rabbi, a mind like a hurricane, back when the Romans destroyed the temple and were hunting Jews. This was the beginning, when the rabbis were creating a world out of stories and morals instead of temple gates and sacrifice goats. Two winds blew at Elisha, Torah and philosophy, the Jew and the Greek, Akiva and Aristotle. In that story of the four, Ben-Abuya was the best of them, the smartest, yet deep in the valley of doubt. When he decided one God was a lie, he didn't just walk away, he turned in his friends to the Romans, as if Malcolm X, say, had fingered his pals to the FBI. You can guess the results. Was it really just a meditation gone bad? Here's another version. Elisha was out walking when he saw a man with a boy alongside a tree. See that nest up there? The man told his son. Climb up and bring me down some eggs. The boy stared at the plump bird in the thin branch. Abba, he said, I can't go up there. The tree won't hold me. I'm your father, the man said, blind for an omelet. You'll do what I say. The boy climbed the tree, gently urged aside the squawking mother, removed a pair of eggs, and on the way down broke a branch and fell to his death. Did his Abba scream and beat his chest? Nobody knows. But Elisha ben Abuya, it's all a lie, roared in his mind. He stared from the broken-necked boy to his friends, all rabbis and students, and told them he did the only two things in the whole book that promise you a long life, and now he's dead. They said, maybe it means the afterlife. Maybe he already prospers in the world on high. But Elisha ben Abuya had already walked away, swept in a storm to the other side. Out of that moment comes all Kabbalah, all its trees and lines and circles, all its diagrams and glory, people transformed into emanations, laws into allegories, bird into empress, all to make sure that what happened to the hurricane mind of Elisha ben Abuya never happens again. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rachel. I wanted to open up for questions. And so anyone on the call, if you'd like to put questions into the chat, please take a moment to do that. We'll start with questions for Rachel. And I know that I have one to start with, Rachel. I was wondering if you could talk about your tarot deck and the image that we're looking at here of the High Priestess that you created.
Yeah, well, I created this with Robert Place, who's a brilliant, brilliant tarot artist. And the deck is called the Raziel Tarot. The Raziel is an angel, and the tradition is that he gave a book of all knowledge to Adam and Eve in the garden. Well, Adam, I changed it to include Eve. And that book also contains all predictions of all future events. So when I read that, I thought, well, that's the tarot cards, all knowledge and predictions of all events. So I designed a deck around the idea that this is what Raziel gave to Adam and Eve, and Adam passed it down to all the patriarchs, Eve to all the matriarchs, and so it's come to us. And so the High Priestess card, which you can see is based on the Rider-Waite-Smith deck, shows the Shekinah, the female aspect of God, who lived in the temple, and she is leaving because the temple is cracking, because God allowed the Romans to destroy it. So that's the theme of the High Priestess in this deck.
Beautiful, thank you. The temple is cracking. I love it. Yeah. Anna, do we have questions in the chat for? And if I could also take us off this screen share, and then we could see everybody and converse a little that way as well.
Yeah, sure thing. So far, no questions in the chat, but again, if anyone would like to throw a question in the chat or come off mute and ask, feel free. All right, we did just get one question actually from Lisa, and it is, Rachel, how do you see a connection between tarot and poetry?
Very interesting question, actually. It's sort of, how to say this, it's not a very simple connection. It's kind of complicated. I feel like they both come from the same source, which is inspiration, which is a kind of divine emanation, really, that filters through our conscious minds, our artistic minds. And so they're two very similar things, but also different. And both of them, to me, are rooted in story. And I don't mean that just literally, but I do mean it as taking an experience, taking spiritual energy and bringing it into a kind of narrative, a kind of inspiration that's not intellectual necessarily. And I think both poetry and tarot do that kind of thing.
For any of the other poets on the call, did you want to chime in with your own experience of writing poems based on the cards?
I think, as I was saying before, the idea also that not only that we go there for inspiration, we go to the cards for inspiration, but also for reflection and the development of intuition. And I think both poetry and the tarot increase self-awareness and are the roads to the evolution of consciousness. The more we reflect, the more we see, the more our consciousness expand. So I think that's why I said at the beginning that I see it as the wings of one bird. And also, to me, poetry is strictly so connected to the natural world, and so are the cards and the elements, and they also are elements that flow through poetry. So it's hard for me to even distinguish one from the other, because in the end they're just fanning the same energy in the end.
Marianela, I love that image, wings of one bird. It's a really beautiful image. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if this is a comment. It's a comment that might go into a question. So one of the things I thought was interesting is that the use of so ekphrastic, right? So writing the poem from the card, which I thought, I didn't write the poem from the image. I wrote it from the words that I associate with that. And I write a lot of ekphrastic work, so I don't know why. I guess for me, the deck that was given to me so long ago, I can't part with it, you know? I can't part with it, but it doesn't have the imagery on it that I often associate with the cards. Like, so I tried to find my own imagery in the poem to kind of go with that meaning. So I don't know if anyone wants to talk about those, like the layers of relationships that are happening there, right? With story and image and symbol, and you know, there's just so many layers. It's fascinating.
I use the deck, like, which is the Korean deck. And that was just very fascinating, because actually Tanya asked me to Tanya if I could write a poem, and then I wrote that one during pandemic, like I think it was like last July or something, June or something, and then which was like that. I grew up with this card that there's like in a playing card in Korea. And it could be just like, you know, my aunt Gumo, like daily, she was like making fortune, you know, playing that game. And then she's trying to find out what's the day's gonna be like, lucky day, bad days, whatever. But then on the other hand, as I explained that, like my dad was gambler and then lost the beautiful house and, you know, whatsoever. So that is just taboo. But then, it's just like I explained in the poem that when I went to Korean market and I found this deck, and then I was just like almost like feel like guilty to even carry it, and then I start like playing during pandemic, and it was just like a lot of unconscious memories coming out with it through the deck, because it has all the meaning of based by on 12 months, like, you know, January, you know, all that kind of stuff, and money, you know, health and all that kind of stuff. So then we are so dependent on what that we're picking up. But like, so I was conscious and then thinking about it, and then like all the stories behind it. And then now I was feeling like, hey, I can make my own story out of like what that, you know, that I'm getting. Like, and then after I play the game, what is the fortune of the day, that after game, And then instead of like, oh, this is like a bad news, instead of that, like, what will that bring her to me? So I think it was like a very fascinating exercise, and then enjoyed making poem, and then just like awakening me, not like instead of like closing that part, like, no, taboo, you cannot touch it. Instead of that, it was like opening up the like new world to me. So thank you.
Yeah, I love that idea too, Tanya. And as we're talking about the layers, I'm thinking about sort of the deck as an object, or in that effectristic way as a leaping point. It's sort of a doorway that opens both ways though, right? And it doesn't even have to be opening in front of you and behind you. It can be more of a 360 experience, but the deck itself as an object gives you a chance to enter the conversation, whether you want to write from there or you want to start saying, oh, wow, what does that Ace of Cups mean for me? Or who is the Empress in my life? Or when have I been an Empress? Or what is that? And again, it is going to be so different depending on the deck in front of you. So there's so many experiences that you can have across multiple decks. If you're a traveler in that way, I tend to like to look at different versions of the same thing, but the invitation is there to engage at whichever level. Yeah, so.
Oh, and then also I wanted to share, like, like, because we are familiar with like the deck, tarot card, but like I wanted to share another part of the world, playing, this is like they're playing the tarot card, as they're playing that too. So thank you, Tanya, allow me to, send you the pictures and all that kind of stuff. I think that this is like a very interesting, we share different decks from the different world.
Yeah, thank you, Tanya. Carrie.
So I think one of the things that was great is that I was relatively new to tarot before I had taken the class that ended up being this book. And I think one of the things Tanya did was showed pictures of like 4 or 5 different decks. And then those of us who had participated also had our decks that we were showing each other. And so you got to see all this different visual imagery, and it kind of coalesced. And from there, and then going through and finding, okay, what do I have? Like, what are important little bits and bobs that I have in my house that kind of all, kind of fit with what I'm taking from the deck. And then it became really kind of, I got a stronger sense of agency. Instead of looking to the deck, I was like building my own. And so that was pretty exciting to do it with the words and the images both.
Yeah, I was just gonna, Carrie and I were in the same class with Tanya. It was absolutely, it was absolutely wonderful to create my own cards, because I do, I respond either very negatively to certain decks or positively. Right now, my favorite deck is the Shining Tribe deck. I absolutely love that, Rachel. And so I love the idea of being able to.
Thank you. I just want to say thank you.
You're welcome.
Sorry.
I'm like, oh, I'm so excited. If you don't know the Shining Tribe deck, I would strongly urge you to look at it. Absolutely gorgeous imagery and words in the book. But I got to think about, what do I want the idea to be, what, my images. And that's what is so interesting to think about, that convergence, the wings on the same bird. I love that to me, I just recently wrote something about tarot and poetry, and I think of it as both reading the signs of the world. And so that's that convergence of the two, I think, is wonderful. And Tanya, your book helps us find ways to create that kind of convergence. So thank you.
Fun. Beautiful. Any other questions or thoughts? Valerie.
I just wanted to say, Tanya, that, oops, I'm competing. Valerie, do you want to say something?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I'm having my girl do really something over here. I really appreciated what everybody said, and the readings and writings were just absolutely beautiful. And
And I really appreciate hearing the different cultural aspects and just people from different places. I wanted to ask a little bit, Marianela, about you also work as a poetry therapist, and I'm wondering, do you use tarot? Are you also like a tarot therapist? How do you use tarot in your work at all? I'm sort of going that direction.
Yes, thank you for the question. No, I don't. I've never used the cards. For me, the tarot is a very private thing that I use. I have my best friend actually is, I can say she's an expert. She has dedicated her life to that. So I learned to love the tarot through her. Her name is Aurora Arias, and she's a Dominican poet and novelist who also is an astrologer. And so I learned to love and to trust the cards through her. But curiously enough, I've never had used it. So now you're kind of putting it in my mind. Why not share with others? Because in poetry therapy, part of what we do is we find a container, which most of the time is a poem or a fragment of a story, for people to extract their own experiences from that, to resonate with the piece that we are offering. So actually using the cards will be so perfect. I don't know why I never thought of that. So thank you.
Perhaps poetry and tarot are a multi-feathered bird.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely.
We did just get one question in the chat as well from Brian. He says, tarot and poetry are both representative of independent, self-justified vision and authority. Also, both are our best tools for interaction with the wheel of time and chance.
Mm-hmm.
So not a question, more of a comment.
I have a question for Tania Pryputniewicz. I think it's a question for all of you, any of you. Do you dream tarot imagery or words? And does that find its way into your non-dreaming world?
It's a beautiful question, Dad. I love that. I do dream tarot. I write those dreams down, and then I bore my friends with it until I find other tarot companions to bounce the dreams off of. But I always pay attention to them, and they have come into some poems. So yeah, I mean, I think the most recent one actually was this past week. I had a dream about a no answer tarot card. My daughter was drawing a card, and it was a round card, completely red with a few black dots, and she was joking around, and someone else was trying to give a very scholarly definition of her card, and she's like, no, Mom, it's the no answer card, duh. That's a card, that's a thing, I gotta make it. So how about the rest of you?
I'm jealous if you're that's fascinating. I've never even thought about it. I think, you know how you say you read stuff before you go to bed or write something. Now I have to start looking at tarot cards and try to dream about them.
I think I'm starting to more look at some Jungian archetypes in terms of tarot. So when I dream or the thing is under the pillow, my card might be under the pillow, the dream I have then morphs into something I'm working with, a shadow or an archetype or something. So it's related, language maybe.
Yeah, it's seeded somehow by the card and then goes from there, yeah. Let's see. I just see one more comment in the chat from Suzanne. I agree with what Valerie just said. It's interesting to listen to the words that arise from the picture of a card and from the meaning, and yet we're shaped by the poet herself, both thought and experience. So yeah, there's like a translation that happens just in looking at a card, and then there's a translation that happens when we go to put that into the poem. So it's like, yeah, lots of translation. beautiful. Any other thoughts or comments?
Well, I just want to give a plug for Tanya's beautiful book. If you haven't picked it up, if you want to work with tarot, I strongly recommend this book. Oh yeah, we all have our book. Yay! It's got such wonderful ideas in it and so creative. I really can recommend it. So,
Thank you, Lisa. Thank you so much. Well, what a beautiful way to bring in the spring. So thank you so much for joining all of us today. And I'd be so excited to see what other tarot poetry we've all written by the end of the year, in the next 5 years, 10 years, and what decks you end up making as well. So thank you again, Rachel, for joining us and for your beautiful tarot contributions. And thank you to all the readers for sharing your poems and helping us put together this book. So, and our audience for coming as well. Thank you so much.